Let's take a trip to a luxurious beach town destination in the middle of the desert. Yes, that's right, the desert. This is the Salton Sea. Here you can see an idyllic beach town resort with a name like Frank Sinatra as a frequenter. Imagine pulling your boat up to the waters to go fishing and hearing the laughter of people playing on the shores and swimming into the waters. Now, this is what it looks like in the present day. There are no more yachts pulling into docks. It's not advised to go swimming nor to fish. The Salton Sea is a man-made lakebed that is currently experiencing a receding shoreline due to the lack of water inflow. The sea was primarily sustained by agricultural runoff, but in 2003, a quantification settlement agreement was made between Imperial County and San Diego County, resulting in a water transfer that shifted Imperial's share of the Colorado River and sent it over to San Diego's growing urban population. This in effect made Imperial County take up more sustainable agricultural water practices, which led to no water going to the sea. The sea is a still body of water with high salinity levels. There are no natural inflows or outflows, so everything that ends up in the water stays there. As the sea continues to dry off, the remaining fine silt on the playa is laden with chemicals such as hydrogen sulfide, arsenic, sodium sulfate, selenium, and agricultural pesticides. The area is prone to strong winds, and when this picks up, the respirable particulate matter acts as a source of air pollution for those who live and work in the area.
What in heaven's name brought you to Casablanca?
My health. I came to Casablanca for the waters.
The waters? What waters? We're in the desert.
I was misinformed.
Imperial County comprises of 179,851 people, demographically divided into 85% Latino, 10% white non-Hispanic, and 3.3% African American. The median income is $46,222 with a poverty rate of 18.1%, compared to California's median income at $78,672 and a poverty rate at 11.5%. The area also has an undocumented presence due to its close proximity to the U.S.-Mexico border. I define the areas in which I concentrated my research as the Coachella Valley, situated north of the Salton Sea, spanning from Palm Springs to Coachella, and Imperial Valley, situated south of the sea from Salton City to Calexico. I conducted my research from the summer of 2021 to early 2022. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I kept my methods primarily virtual. I conducted interviews with participants and attended community meetings. I wanted to seek out whether my participants understood the drying sea as having toxic implications on their health, what their awareness was surrounding the environmental degradation of the sea, how their perceptions related with their involvement in activism towards changing laws, regulations, and policies towards the sea, and if they perceived their socioeconomic status as a barrier towards attaining equitable attention and conservation efforts from federal, state, local, and private entities. The majority of my participants are Hispanic and within the age range of 20s to 50s. Some have or are currently involved with activism work with the Salton Sea. A couple have a college education while others work in various fields. My participant Joey, who used to live a mile away from the sea, told me, "I don't want to be a person that throws around race and everything, but I feel like it just does play a role. I don't think this would ever happen to a community filled with white people." Environmental injustice, or environmental racism, considers how racial minorities and the poor experience disproportionate environmental burdens near where they work or live, compared to the rest of the population. This can be coupled with not receiving any urgent attention from local or state officials to push policy or implement measures to improve living conditions. Environmental justice, on the other hand, is defined as the attainment of equity and protection from environmental and health hazards that encompasses all people regardless of race, income, culture, or social class. My participant Rosario explained to me her awareness of the disparities of treatment towards populations with respect to the enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Like summer in Beverly Hills, where it's higher income, I don't think they will let something like this go. But because where the Salton Sea is and the people that live around it, the majority of them are farm workers and many of them live under the poverty level. Beverly Hills is a city that conveys wealth and affluence, known for multi-million-dollar mansions and luxury shopping. Rosario illuminates how the amount of attention and care given to environmental management depends on socioeconomic factors within the population. Beverly Hills would never have to endure the extremity of environmental burden that the Salton Sea does. My participant Juan moved to Salton City from San Bernardino during the COVID-19 pandemic, after his house burned down and there was no other affordable area to move to. He informed himself as much as he could about the Salton Sea, its history, and its growing public health threat. His knowledge inspired him to become involved in community activism. He is aware of the toxins he is constantly exposed to from the sea and its effects on his health. He noticed the toll on his energy and how difficult it was to breathe, which hindered his ability to function to the level he was used to prior. Juan's experience is known as environmental suffering, a concept that encompasses the experience of living in a toxic context and that surpasses the mere biological effects. On the flip side, Joey, who grew up in the area for most of his life, when he moved away, he noticed actual improvements to his health. I developed asthma after a while of being there. I only noticed because when I moved, my breathing got better. Unfortunately, for most who live in the area, the ability to move or leave is not an affordable or viable option, thus perpetuating a cycle of having to endure getting sick and not being able to escape to a healthier environment. My participant Cruz is a recent college graduate from Salton City. He has lived in the area for most of his life and mentioned to me about the lack of resources in the area. When discussing the availability of healthcare centers and emergency rooms, he laughed and responded, "Yeah, if something happens to you, you're waiting 30 minutes to get to the emergency room, unless you're getting airlifted." He explained how his mom was a single mother and did all of the grocery shopping for the family, which mostly consisted of microwave dinners. He never knew where she went shopping. It wasn't until he had visited back from college and tried to find healthy options nearby, but realized none of that was offered at the local stores. The only options in close proximity are mini-marts and gas stations, which do not provide healthy or cheap options. The nearest grocery stores are a 30-minute commute, and he realized the microwave dinners were all that his mom could conveniently pick up. Mariela is a policy advocate for Leadership Council, a nonprofit organization in the San Joaquin and eastern Coachella Valley. She leads monthly meetings with community members, engaging them with decisions being made about the Salton Sea. She mentioned to me the irony of the Salton Sea's location next to expensive facilities made for the rich, while there is still a need for basic necessities in the area. It's in Thermal, right where you have all of these issues happening, with no clinic, no groceries, high pollution, and all of these other vulnerable residents living there. And then there's this big racetrack with multi-million-dollar homes and race cars, and this exclusive place for extremely wealthy folks. Joey tried finding ways to become involved in activism efforts, but eventually became discouraged due to the lack of information available. I haven't found anything in regards to how I can help out. It got to a point where I stopped trying, which is sad, but it's true. He, like many others in the area, merely worked to survive. He discussed to me that when you're working just to be able to afford what's necessary, there is no time to think about other outside issues. I was just trying to make ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck. When you're like that for so long, you're in fight or flight. You disconnect from everything you don't need to pay attention to in that immediate moment. This turns activism work into a luxury that only those with secure money and time can afford to participate in. My participant Juan became involved in activism efforts and has friends also involved in activism with the Salton Sea, but he says that their scope of producing change is limited. Sadly, many of my friends don't have the training, capacity, or knowledge. He recognizes his limitations with speaking English, and not having a college degree limits himself as to his power in the sphere of decision making. He told me he wants to go back to school to get a political science degree to have more power to bring forth change, in the hopes that he can do something in the future to fight for this cause directly. You might be asking yourself, why am I talking about grocery stores and clinics in a Salton Sea project? The environment is not solely bodies of water or national parks, but also coexists with the infrastructure that keeps us functioning. Time and money is inordinately allotted to primarily survival efforts through long commutes to essential industries. This is before we talk about the drying lakebed next door. You cannot isolate the sea from this larger pattern of social inequalities that negatively impact quality of life. The environmental justice framework needs to account for these inconveniences that are all connected in how they impact human existence. Improved urban planning could help make people's lives easier and give them the energy necessary to continue advocating for improvements to their communities. We have the power to make decisions that inevitably affect the environment we live in. These choices will ultimately come back to us and end up affecting our and our community's health. Decisions were made that led to the Salton Sea's current state. I apply political ecology here, which is the study of relationships among political, economic, and social factors in relation to the environment and involves investigating environmental equities through the examination of government-civil society interface. As climate change accelerates, we will all bear these environmental consequences at varying levels. Can you imagine stepping outside of your home and noticing every effort it takes to breathe in and seeing your children cough with frequent asthma bouts? This is the reality that could become widespread. As my participant Jenny said, the dust doesn't stop at the border. We need to challenge the system in place that allows environmental injustices like this to happen, especially in marginalized communities where access to those with the power to make these decisions is not so easy. It's clear that we all don't experience environmental burdens equally, and we need to consider ways to give those in a marginalized position more power in the decision-making processes that ultimately affect the environment in which they live and work in.